From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. What can one small college in Kentucky tell us about race, class, and opportunity in America? Berea College has been wrestling with those questions since the 19th century, doing things differently than almost any other school in the country. It was the first interracial and coeducational college in the South, and since 1892, it's offered a tuition-free education. Today, we're taking a closer look at Berea's story and what it can teach us about equity, education, and community. Later on, we'll be talking with Morgan Younge, a Berea alum and a Louisville-based theater artist, educator, and writer. And joining us now is Gretchen Dykstra. Gretchen is the author of Lessons from the Foothills, Berea College and its Unique Role in America. It's a book that examines the college's founding values and how they show up today. Her background spans education, public service, and nonprofit leadership, including roles in philanthropy, city government, and as the founding president of the 9/11 Memorial Foundation. Gretchen, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, with all the different paths your career has taken, from teaching to public service, how did you first come across Berea College, and what made you want to dedicate a whole book to it?
When I was a little girl, my grandparents lived in Cincinnati, and my grandmother had once said to me something about Berea and her admiration for it. I didn't remember any of the details, but I do have that memory. And then in 2011, I saw a little ad in the New Yorker that said, "Visit Appalachia with Berea College." And I thought, isn't that the college Granny told me about? So I signed up and I took a week-long tour that Berea had organized, when we spent 2 or 3 days at the college and then out in a part of Virginia, Tennessee, and back into Kentucky. And I loved it. And I was completely blown away by Berea. And so I sort of fell in love with this place that I only had a slight memory of, and now it's filled out and it's kind of become my North Star because I think Kentucky should be very proud of the institution of Berea.
That's beautiful. And, in your exploration of Berea, you wrote about John G. Fee in your book, who founded Berea College in a slave state before the Civil War. What can you tell us about the college's origin story, and what aspects of Fee's vision do you find still shape Berea's mission now today?
Well, that's such a good question. I think John Fee was such an extraordinary man. He went and got his divinity degree at the Lane Theological Seminary in Cincinnati. It no longer exists. And he was the son of a slave owner in Kentucky who his father was a tobacco farmer. They had 13 slaves, which was considered large for Kentucky, but it's hardly a plantation state. And John Fee, in his own autobiography, said that he was very friendly with some of the kids who were the black kids on his father's farm, but he had never thought about slavery till he got to Lane. And he had two colleagues who were just amazed that he hadn't thought about the immorality of slavery. So he told his father he had become an abolitionist. His father insisted that he come home, and he did. And his father never really forgave him, although they never were estranged. And John Fee became an itinerant minister, a Presbyterian minister, going from church to church, trying to convince people that they had a moral obligation to oppose slavery. And the Presbyterians, as a church, supported abolition, but they didn't, in fact, deny the ability of its members to pray in their churches. And John Fee found that hypocritical. So he left the Presbyterian Church and decided to start a school. Wasn't yet a college, it was a school for anybody who wanted to go, boys and girls, men and women, who would study together in an integrated coeducational way. And that's what he did, starting in 1855. So what I find remarkable is his commitment to um, love thy neighbor as you'd love yourself, and that. Uh, Extraordinary broad definition of love is what shaped the college and continues to shape the college, and yet focused on kids who have great potential and also great need. And so, what amazes me about Berea is it has this extraordinary history, and it's never left the fundamental values that shaped the college. And the students, as far as I can tell, and I went back many, many times over 10 years to write this book, I never met a student who wasn't, in fact, appreciative of John Fee, knew the history, and understood the value of what he had started.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about the values that are guiding this college. The values that guide it, they're called the 8 Great Commitments. Was there one that especially stuck out to you? Obviously, we're talking about the love that guides it, but something that felt urgent when you were writing this book that sort of was highlighted.
Well, I think the fact that it's focused primarily on Central Appalachia. So it's a regional school, but has an aspiration that is, in fact, global. So I think what struck me most when I first got to know the place was the fact that so many of the kids, well, they're all poor. They're all under the poverty line. They all get free tuition. They all work, many of them in their majors. So I was struck by the high academic standards coupled with the high expectations that these kids can do it. And then the other piece that really touched me was its commitment to Central Appalachia. And I'll tell you one story about that tour. At the very end of the tour, we were in the Cumberland Gap and we were about to pull into a sort of funky motel to spend the night, looking down into the Cumberland Gap. And as we climbed off, and there were 18 of us, as we climbed off the bus, there were a group of sort of beefy white guys on motorcycles, and they were checking out of the motel. And one of them called and said, "Where are you all from?" And somebody said, "Berea College." And with that, all of those guys, and I think there were 10 of them, put up their thumbs and zoomed away. And I thought, whoa, these guys, everybody knows about Berea and everybody is proud of it. And so I was really struck by how Berea since 1892 has been committed to Central Appalachia in a whole host of ways. So wherever I went, you'd meet people who knew about Berea because there was a kid in their neighborhood who got in, or there was a project that Berea was doing. So I think what amazes me is for a small liberal arts college who has never lost its way, its very, very deep commitment to where their students come from. And that is remarkable.
And, since 1892, it's also been tuition free. How is that possible?
In 1892, they began to give free tuition, and by 1920, they realized that this was going to be their fundamental mission, always keeping the endowment up. And so they launched a very aggressive fundraising campaign. They estimate that the first $600,000 that they have raised over those years now turns into a $1.2 billion endowment. And so it is the only college in America that only spends its endowment on student tuition. Think about that. The only college in America where the endowment is spent just on students. That's remarkable. And I might add that it's only one of a handful of colleges in America that gets a triple A rating from Moody's. The United States government doesn't have a triple A rating from Moody's. Berea College does. So it's combination of loyalty to the initial values, good financial management, and commitment to students, I think makes it unique and provides lessons for the field.
Just for those who don't know, can you explain what that AAA rating is?
Oh, it means that There is a office that reviews how you invest your money and, more importantly, how do you spend it. And most not-for-profits, and I'm not criticizing it, it's the reality of how hard it is to run organizations where you have to raise money all the time. Berea has never spent any of its principal. So as it builds up its endowment, if the times are tough and the endowment value goes down, they figure out a way to tighten their belts without ever hurting the kids. That also is quite extraordinary. So it's a sign that you're being financially responsible.
And so, from your research, if we're looking at the history of Berea College, it's navigated political and cultural tensions, especially as an institution rooted in justice and inclusion within a conservative region. How has it navigated those through history? And are there moments from the college past that stand out in regard to navigating political or cultural tensions?
It's such an interesting question and such an important one because, unlike today, Berea doesn't talk about DEI. It doesn't necessarily talk about inequality. That's because of John Fee. John Fee, right from the beginning, understood that if we're going to talk about love your neighbor as yourself and that all people of the world are from one blood, you have to allow everybody in. And that's what they do, but they don't see themselves as a political institution. And that was one of the things that surprised me. I thought that I would start visiting a place that hung its politics out for everybody to see. It's not. In fact, I don't think Berea participates writ large in the political scene. I think they do it focused on the campus. And I'll tell you one story that really moved me. Um, Several years ago, first year students are assigned their roommates, and a white girl and a black girl were rooming together. And the white girl was from Tennessee and kept using the N word. And her black roommate asked her to stop, but it was habitual, and she didn't stop it. She didn't know how to stop it. So the black girl went to the Office of Student Affairs and said, "If you don't move me, I'm going to end up hitting her." And the head of student affairs, happened to be an African American woman, said, "That is not what we do at Berea. We don't walk away from problems, we lean into problems. I will protect you, I will help you, but I'm not going to let you move." She then called in the white girl, and the white girl was, in fact, told that she had to write a paper under the tutelage of the person who ran the African American Studies program to write a paper about the history, the politics, and the societal implications of the N word. She had to write a paper that passed muster. That was told to the head of Office of Student Affairs. And then Berea had what they have occasionally, which is a talk in the afternoon where anybody is invited and they talk about tough issues. And that day they talked about the N word. And people could ask questions of both the white girl from Tennessee, a black young man, and the head of the African American Studies program. And they had this wide open conversation. And I said to the head of the Office of Student Affairs, "What do you think happened to those two girls?" And she smiled and said, "Well, they stayed roommates all through their freshman year." And she said, "I don't know, but I bet you the black girl has a lot of good stories to say. And I hope that the white girl, the next time she hears the N word, will say, 'Wait till you hear what I learned at Berea.'" And I thought that was fabulous. It's that idea that you don't run away from being held accountable. You are, in fact, helped to see why that might, in fact, be hurtful to other people. That struck me as something that most colleges are not doing today. They have a problem, they separate the kids. At Berea, it's just the opposite.
Yeah, a deeper understanding there and true education.
True
Uh,
education, right?
First, I mean, and really firsthand, that's a fascinating, incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask you, like, when you were interviewing students, when you were interviewing faculty, like, what was a story that stood out to you? But you've already given this to me in so many ways, which I absolutely love. So, what I really want to ask you, and you've said this in so many ways, is how does Berea compare to other colleges or institutions that you've encountered?
It was that's such an that question makes a lot of sense, but I'm not an academic. As you alluded to, I've been in and out of the not for profit and government world. I came to writing late in my life. And so I realized that if you try to compare it, you're going to get blasted out of the water because you don't know other colleges as well. So I can't answer that question other than I read a lot about higher education, and I know that a lot of schools are struggling with a variety of issues: the low enrollment of men, the veering away from liberal arts, as well as some of the political struggles on campus. And Berea, I'm not suggesting that they don't have that, but I'm suggesting that because of the eight great commitments, they have principles that they can always turn back to. And I think that makes a difference.
Do you think then, I guess, in asking in a different way, really, what do you think, just generally, other schools or even communities could take away from Berea's model, especially as like we talked about, many schools face different issues, affordability, opportunity, inclusion being some of them.
I think that I've given this a lot of thought. It seems to me that it's very hard to retool institutions that have a long history. And so it's hard to imagine that Berea could be picked up and replaced somewhere else. But I do think that the labor piece is extraordinarily important. I have many friends who, when they hear about that, they go, "Well, I was in work study in college. What's the difference?" Well, the difference is at Berea, many of those students are working in the fields in which they'd like to major in, number one. Number two, Berea makes paid internships in your chosen field possible for all students. And three, they continue to hold on to the liberal arts, even though you can get certificates at Berea, so that the students leave with this breadth of understanding, but at the same time with work experience. And by the way, Berea, every student when they graduate gets an academic transcript and a labor transcript. So every time they've changed their labor assignment, which they do every semester, the head of their labor program writes a comment about how well they did in their labor jobs. So you walk away from Berea with a first-rate education. And by the way, last week on Apple News, Berea was listed as one of the 10 hardest schools to get into. And it is. It's very difficult to get into because of the free tuition and because of the labor commitment. All colleges can't provide free tuition, but all colleges can do a much better job at connecting kids' need to work with what they're interested in.
Do you think that that piece, that work study piece, kind of defines like the success for its students?
If you ask the students, yes, over and over again, the Office of Institutional Research at Berea asks students, I don't know if it's every year upon graduation, over and over and over again, they cite the labor and the free tuition as the two things that made Berea special. But I never met a student who didn't like Berea. And here's another nice story. I spent a week digging deep into the Christian commitment because that worried me a little bit. I thought, is this an ecumenical school? Is this a parochial school? Again, it goes back to John Fee. And I asked one young woman, why aren't you study Judaism or Muslim religion? And she smiled and she said, if John Fee had been a Jew or if John Fee was a Muslim, we would be studying those religious traditions. But John Fee was a Christian. And so everybody takes a course called Understanding Christianities. And when I was in Berea that week looking at the Christian commitment, I had to get to the chapel. And so I stopped a young man after a class. He had blue hair and an earring in. And I said, excuse me. I said, you're a student here. Yes. Turns out that he was from the mountains of North Carolina. He had come to Berea as addicted to drugs, and he had flunked out, and they had sent him home, and he went home and he said, I got clean and sober because there was somebody in my village who everybody loved who had gone to Berea. And he said, and I applied to go back to Berea and they accepted me. And he turned to me and he said, so I'm not aware of the Christian commitment, but isn't forgiveness a Christian value? Berea, in fact, embraces that. And I thought, wow, he said they care about their students. And so I care about Berea.
What's one takeaway before I let you go that you haven't expressed in this experience that you'd like us to know about your experience with Berea?
Let me tell you about the admissions office because I think that Berea's secret sauce, beyond the money they have and the commitments they've articulated, I think the secret sauce is how they find the students. And one of the admissions counselors said to me, you know, we look for success before we look for the sob stories. We're not a charity. We are looking for kids who can become Bereans or who are already shown a sign of being committed to their community. And they said, that's what we look for, because many of those students are coming from weak high schools. Many of those students had come from troubled families. But if they find something that in fact makes them civically engaged and personally committed to community, is Berean. That's what I'm left with, thinking, wow, they're turning out terrific students. What a good place to donate to. And by the way, I'm donating to Berea, even though I've written the book. I don't think my commitment is over.
Gretchen, thank you so much for being here with us on Track.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Gretchen Dykstra is the author of Lessons from the Foothills, Berea College, and its Unique Role in America. We'll be back with more in a moment. You're on Track with Louisville Public Media.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Welcome back to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and today we're talking about the legacy and future of Berea College. We're joined now by Morgan Younge. Morgan works as an actor, writer, costume designer, and teaching artist with a number of arts organizations in Louisville. Morgan is also a grant recipient from the Kentucky Foundation for Women and has taught with several arts organizations across the region. Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
So, Morgan, how did you first learn about Berea, and what made you decide it was the right place for you?
Real simply, I was sitting in French class in high school, and the guidance counselor called me down to their office, and I was like, okay, y'all, I'm out, because French was not my favorite subject. And so I went down there, and she was like, hey, Morgan, are you interested in an $80,000 scholarship? And I didn't have to call home and ask my mom. I was just like, yes, I am interested in an $80,000 scholarship. Tell me more. And she was like, well, there's a recruiter from this college called Berea College up in Kentucky, and he's going to tell you about the school. And I walk in there, and there are about 5 or 6 other students who I knew. So I was like, oh, okay. So it felt really, VIP to get into this scholarship information. And one of those students, I actually was my roommate our freshman year.
Oh, wow.
So, we both came from the same high school. The major thing that helped me apply to Berea was that it didn't have an application fee. Application fees were a major barrier in my decision or choices to attend college. Just being able to fill out college applications was a barrier. I think my mom gave me a smooth $100. So I was able to apply to 2 colleges and Berea. I did get into all 3 of them, but obviously the scholarship at Berea was the best. And my mom helped me with that application, and I got accepted and got $80,000 worth of scholarship. Woohoo!
Yeah, and was that a big determining factor over the other 2 that you got accepted to?
Yeah, it wasn't really hard choices for me.
Yeah, fair.
and that's why Berea, because they want the economically challenged folks to be there. That's why it started, was for poor people and all people. And I fit into those categories. But at the end of the day, when I reflect back on my time at Berea and choosing to go there and study and to graduate, I don't, that was the best place for me. And even though I came from a big city, I'm originally from Nashville, it was the perfect place for me.
And when did you go to Berea, and what were you studying?
I started Berea in 2002, and I studied theater and communication.
And so what was life at Berea like for you at the time, and what was the culture like on campus? It's a big question because college experience is a huge thing.
Yes. One of the things, they no longer have it, but it's a weekend, is called the Carter G. Woodson Weekend. And Carter G. Woodson is the founder of Black History Month. And so they had a Carter G. Woodson Weekend where new freshmen of African American descent came to the college for the weekend. So we kind of had that weekend to get to know people. It might have been before we even got roommates and things. But that was an awesome experience, getting to know more people before you actually get there. And I just felt it was beautiful. The campus is beautiful. And I just felt welcomed and felt like, oh, yeah, I could be all right here.
So another thing about Berea College, I know, is that it historically navigated political and cultural tensions, especially as an institution rooted in justice and inclusion within a conservative region. Since you've attended Berea College more recently, did you experience any of those tensions on campus? And how do you think the college's mission plays out in today's polarized climate?
I think the college's mission plays out that ultimately we are all one. And we have to show respect to everyone. And you give respect to get respect. And I think us students having that common denominator of we're all poor, we all came from nothing, we all had a parent in jail, or a lot of us had a parent in jail, or a lot of us had our adults on drugs, or all of those life traumas that happen. I think we all started in the same place, not really knowing what was up. Some of them were first generation people going to college. Some of us were not, and so I think we started with the even playing ground that we are all poor. So you can't really, puff your chest up too much, no matter what kind of clothes you have on. No one's better than anybody else. You can say what you need to say. You can say what you want to say. And I might disagree, but at the end of the day, I'm going to respect you. And I think that respect is extraordinarily large across the campus when I was there.
Well, Morgan, I really appreciate you being here on Track. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Morgan Younge is a Berea alum and a Louisville-based theater artist and educator, and Gretchen Dykstra is the author of Lessons from the Foothills, Berea College and its Unique Role in America. On Track is a production of Louisville Public Media. The On Track production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Alex Biscardi, and Laura Ellis. Our music is by Kojin Toshiro. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and remember, being kind is free. That's the start of community. Until next time, you're on Track with Louisville Public Media.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.